For 18 months now, Sydney and Melbourne have had near weekly protests against the war in Gaza, sometimes tens of thousands strong, shutting down streets, disrupting business and intimidating passers-by. Now, given the viciousness of numerous speakers blasting the Australian government for being insufficiently pro-Gaza, yet this is a government, of course, that's junked decades of bipartisan support for Israel to pander to an Islamist vote in Labor-held seats, for many participants, these were actually protests against Australia as much as they were pro-Gaza, meaning that sooner or later there was going to be a reaction. And now there is, as even quiet Australians, not those of the permanent activist class, have taken to the streets, they say, in a bid to take their country back. 2 weekends ago, across the nation, at least 50,000 people marched for Australia, many of them draped in the Australian flag, in contrast to all the rival protesters, mostly with the Palestinian flag on their shoulders, but often too the Aboriginal flag, in solidarity against what the Marxists want to call settler colonialism. Many on the left call these Reclaim Australia protesters divisive, bigoted, even racist, in a bid to shut them down and close them down. Some Liberal MPs even warned people before the marches not to turn up. The Prime Minister, at least to his credit, accepted there were lots of ordinary Australians in those big nationwide marches, as well as, quite rightly, he said right-wing nut jobs. Well, again on the weekend, there were more of these protest marches, including clashes of rival groups in Melbourne that all but shut down the city, leading to lots of locals avoiding the CBD and pushing already struggling businesses to breaking point. This morning, Melbourne restaurateur Shane D'Elia, owner of the wonderful, successful Maha restaurant, expressed the frustration of so many.
Look, I haven't got a total dollar figure over the last couple of years, but we're down 60% on our trade on Saturdays.
Right.
Just on last year, and last year was already 60% down on the year before.
Public servants now allowed to work from home. Melbourne is struggling. It's not like the rest of the country coming out of COVID. And yet here we are in the middle of the AFL finals, on the cusp of the Spring Racing Carnival, and yet violent protests are occurring every single week. That's what's going to greet tourists, even if they take the risk and come to Melbourne. I mean, it is a joke. The Premier, rather than tackle it, well, today she skipped off to China, and soon to follow her, the Lord Mayor Nicholas Rees. Now, neither of these junkets are at all justifiable. Rees in particular, who promised big but is yet to deliver on cleaning up the city of Melbourne, making it safer, getting rid of bike lane congestion and getting business back on its feet. The fact that ordinary people are now taking to the streets, just like the farmers did a few months back and the firefighters as well, shows how little they think of the politicians or their ability to fix the mess. All of these groups are looking for leadership, all of them, because they don't believe they are getting it from the mainstream political parties. And given the Liberal Party is the opposition party almost everywhere across the country, they clearly don't see the Liberals doing enough to expose the excesses of Labor governments. Hence, they feel forced to take themselves onto the streets. It's precisely because there's no real authority figures behind these protests, they're more of a spontaneous reaction to months, if not years of drift, that occasionally the microphone's been captured by ratbags. Now, this increasingly widespread feeling that the country we love is slipping away is not to descend into even more fragmentation, polarisation, perhaps even mob violence. Well, responsible leaders must step up. And that means the people ordinarily charged with leading the opposition have got to lift their game. Australians need a Liberal Party that knows what it's for, what it's against, and what it wants to do if it gets the chance. Now, coincidentally, today is the 10th anniversary of the political execution by his own gormless, bedwetting colleagues of the last federal leader with a bit of courage and conviction. This is 10 years ago today. If you want my view as to how and when and why the Liberal malaise set in, it was back then when a carpet-bagging Malcolm Turnbull staged his coup against Tony Abbott. 10 years on, look where that's left the Liberal Party. Today's Newspoll has the Liberal National primary vote at just 27%. That is at a historic low, and it's a whopping 19 percentage points behind where Tony Abbott was in 2013, storming into government. A 27% primary. In the party's 80-year history, never have they had such a result. And yet it's hardly surprising when the current leader's just sacked from the front bench an Indigenous woman who's the only current MP they have who's led a successful national political campaign on anything. The problem, though, isn't just lacklustre personalities. It's a party that lacks strong positions on anything. On record high immigration levels, with at least some recent migrants unsure whether they've joined Team Australia or just living here in Hotel Australia, well, we've had nothing from the Libs. On the energy train wreck, with power prices through the roof, industry migrating offshore and government strangling the resource sector that's been our economic lifeblood for decades, well, again, we've got nothing. Sorry, actually, there's a report, a review into a report that might come back to us in 12 months' time, but we're going to get hit with these enormous 2035 emissions target in days. The Libs don't have a luxury of a 12-month review. On the weekend in Victoria, in response to escalating crime, especially home invasions by young people, Liberal State Leader Brad Batten announced he'd finally bring in Jack's Law, permitting police to use metal detectors on people they suspect are carrying knives. Now, all credit to him. Good on you, Brad Batten. This is a fantastic move. But why couldn't you have said that immediately last week after those two boys were butchered on the weekend? Why rule out Jack's Law for a whole week, only to then announce it at a Liberal event on Saturday, making it look like you'd been forced into it, when, I'll give you your dues, you probably had this in mind all the way along. Because that's the problem with these oppositions, state and federal. They're not nimble enough, they're not working hard enough or fast enough. They're not capitalising on public mood, and frankly, I just don't think they look hungry enough. Now, this is not rocket science, this is politics 101. The fact that there is no plan, or at least no plan that anyone's crusading for day after day, suggests that the party's too dumb to figure one out, too timid to risk expressing it, or too divided to unite around a plan. Now, you've heard me before. Nature abhors a vacuum. A Liberal Party that keeps losing to deeply underwhelming Labor governments, and honestly, governments don't get any worse than Labor in Victoria, will eventually be replaced by another party with more conviction, more courage, and a plan. Just look at what's happening with reform in the UK and those huge pro-Britain rallies over the weekend. Decent people who won't fight let in the fanatics. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Yeats wrote that long ago. So Liberals, on your horrific 27 primary, let me tell you, the clock is ticking.